Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are here today at the 7th edition of the BW Hotelier IHA 2023, the magnificent summit that is put together each year and attracts the finest leaders from the hospitality and the travel segment. I'm, of course, privileged today to have as my guest someone who's been a poster boy for the Indian hospitality sector, a great ambassador for the sector with his fabulous leadership, his lovely persona and his endearing nature. Someone who manages close to 550 hotels and counting across 21 countries with over 125,000 keys. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Rajeev Menon, President, Asia Pacific, excluding China, Marriott Hotels. Rajiv, welcome.
Thank you, Mandeep.
It's always such an honor and privilege to chat with you. I'm delighted to have you here. Let's start with putting some history into perspective. Marriott first came to India in 1999 with the Goa Marriott Hotel, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And at that time, you were probably still not in the system.
That is
correct.
correct.
And you came a couple of years later at the Renaissance in Mumbai in 2001 as a general manager, and then it's history from there. It's been 22 years and counting. You now have more hotels that you manage than the number of rooms you had at the hotel that you were the general manager of. India has 145, 146. It's so dynamic, the number keeps changing. Hotels, you're the largest hotel operator in the country. And of course, the large portfolio that you manage in Asia Pacific. Tell us a little about this journey, this really exciting, interesting journey.
Mandeep, first and foremost, it's a pleasure to join you. And as always, you are very kind. It has been an honor and a privilege to work alongside some incredibly talented people at Marriott over last 22 years or so. I remember coming on board from Sydney to join the Renaissance, and initially I had thought that, I was going to Mumbai to one of the hotels that was going to be somewhere in the city. I remember in the morning waking up and opening the curtains and finding a lake around the property, and only to be told later on that, this is where many Mumbaikars would come and picnic for years. So what started as a hotel that was an urban resort today is now pretty much part of the peripheral business district of Mumbai. And from there on, the journey has been truly, humbling, exciting, and an incredible learning experience for me. I've been back and forth between Australia, here in India, running the region, became COO in 2015, and then president in October of 2019. So just about 4 years. And as soon as I became president, I went straight into COVID. So there was no better learning experience than what we all went through over the last 2 or 3 years. But today, as we look back, I continue to say that you almost have to pinch yourself to see where we were 24 months ago and how many of us had thought our industry had changed forever, to today, when we seem to be breaking every record that there is in the history of Asia Pacific. So it has truly been a remarkable journey, and I'm just so thrilled and proud to be part of a great team.
I'm going to take up that comment that you made about breaking all records, and I think that's happening in most parts of the globe. And a lot of people were writing the obituary of this sector when COVID had hit us. And a lot of us actually in the initial stages didn't really know where we were heading, and what a comeback it's been. We're witnessing in many parts of the world, and thankfully in India as well, a sort of pricing power that the industry has seemingly got now, which is something that was the bane for this sector. At least I know that in India, one of our biggest problems was we were just not getting the rates. And that now seems to be turned around. We keep having this debate, we keep having this discussion internally and with various leaders. Is this something that's here to stay? And I'm going to ask you this question with your vision and the kind of portfolio that you manage and the exposure that you have for the sector.
So I have a firm belief that COVID has reaffirmed the power of travel. When humanity at large was locked up in their respective homes and had all the time to think, they figured out that nothing was more important than their freedom, the ability to travel, spend time with family and friends. And that's about what we've seen as soon as borders have opened in any country around the world. People have come out and they have a willingness today to pay for experiences. They are willing to pay a premium for experiences. And I believe this is here to stay. When you look at the recovery pretty much across the world, even markets that had come out of COVID quite early, be it United States or Middle East for that matter, rates are holding and only moving upwards in those markets. So I remain fairly optimistic as far as Asia Pacific is concerned. You got to keep in mind, Asia was first into the pandemic and almost the last to come out, right? While China was truly the last to come out in my world, it was Japan that opened its borders in November of last year. So we've seen varied recovery across Asia Pacific, but it's a very similar trend that as soon as borders open up, the domestic folks start to travel first. It's driven by leisure, and then you start to see international travel.
Interestingly, Asia, as you mentioned and we witnessed, was amongst the slowest to sort of recover from the impact of COVID. Having said that, it seems to be clearly one of the regions that's going to be the fastest growing region across the world in terms of overall investment, and not just for the hospitality sector alone. And it has several fabulous destinations which are gaining in popularity, many countries which are becoming economically much stronger, and the sort of turnaround that you're seeing in India as well. I know Marriott recently had their investor forum, and out of that, I think circa 250,000 rooms are going to be added over the next 2 years. I wanted to get a sense from you on how important is Asia Pacific in the whole story, and especially India. How do you see India mapping out in the growth story?
Give you a little bit of perspective on where Asia Pacific ex-China is at for a minute. Just this year, APEC, as we call it, as a region will contribute 33% of world GDP contribution. We see as the geopolitical situation kind of being so dynamic that there is definitely shift with supply chains and other investments coming into Southeast Asia, India, and other markets around Asia Pacific. So what we have been seeing for some time is growth almost in every market across Asia Pacific. Now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, the Asia story and where was the growth, I would have said to you China and India. That was pretty much it. The other markets were growing, but at a relatively slow pace. Today, when you look at where we are at, in APEC, which is ex-China, we just opened our 550th hotel last month in Singapore, the largest aloft in the world, 785 keys.
Wow.
We have today in India 145 hotels. Japan has been another stunning market for us. We today have 93 open hotels and a very strong pipeline. When you look at Southeast Asia, we have a total of 210 operating hotels and a pipeline of another 110 hotels there. You look at Korea, where 7-8 years ago we used to have just about 6 hotels. Today we have 34 and growing at a rapid pace. And same with Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific. We just opened 44, and next year we'll hit the 50 mark. So what is really happening, the intra-Asia travel is growing at double digit year on year. And coming out of COVID, we see that this travel pattern is only going to excel as we continue to move forward. So when you look at pipelines of any major hotel companies, and Marriott included, there is, when you start including China and APEC, we have a very, very strong pipeline. As you know, we just opened our 1,000th hotel
correct,
in March of this year, which is all of Asia Pacific. And we have another, I would say, 800 to 900 hotels in the pipeline. So that is phenomenal growth. And I believe Asia Pacific represents decades-long opportunity. India is one of the strongest markets within Asia Pacific ex-China.
I'm so glad to hear that, and I think India's time has finally come. I think a lot of work that happened over the last maybe a decade and a half is now going to give us dividends in India, and I think all the spend that we're seeing on the infrastructure side and the geopolitical situation and the China plus one and the many things that are happening, putting India in the right spot, is going to be a big growth story for India. We got to know that India, for you, in terms of top line revenue, crossed $1 billion this year. It's taken you probably 22, 23 years to get to the first billion. I'm going to ask you to hazard a guess on how long it's going to take you for the next billion.
Well, let me say this, that India growth story for us has been remarkable. We have always believed that India is a strategic market. It's now today fourth biggest market for Marriott in the world, which is exciting. And I think given our growth pipeline of 65 additional hotels and the number of deals our teams are signing, I expect the next billion could come within the next 10 years.
I would have thought that myself. If I was to hazard a guess, I would have said, 10 years, maybe earlier. The scale is already there, the distribution is there, critical mass is there, and India is, of course, shining. Having said that, what's your take? What's the segment that you see growing the fastest within your portfolio, or within any portfolio for that matter?
So when you look at various lodging segments, obviously given the population base of Asia Pacific, the demographics, growth is very strong in secondary and tertiary markets, which means that typically select service hotels, Courtyard by Marriott, Four Point Sheraton, Fairfield by Marriott, and Moxy as brands are growing at a very, very strong pace. But to put into perspective, luxury for us in APEC is 20% of our
total portfolio,
and provides us an incredible halo, right? And it's growing at a very, very strong pace. But you can only put so many luxury hotels in key resort markets and key gateway cities. So when you start to move beyond, when you look at the India story today, we have hotels in 49 cities across India. We have 16 brands, 27,000 rooms. And as you see growth, it's predominantly coming in secondary and tertiary markets and resort locations. So that's where we see a strong growth opportunity for the select service brands particularly.
So secondary and tertiary markets, like you said, would be more the mid-scale select service, and the resort locations would probably be more luxury.
Correct. So when you think about JW Marriott as a brand, it's done exceptionally well. We now have 10 open, another 8 in the pipeline, and the way we are going, we'll be signing a few more shortly. So I remain pretty, positive on the luxury space within India. Now, India has always had an incredible legacy of luxury hotels, and I've been part of that growth story. Started my career with ITC, and I have huge respect for all Indian hospitality, companies because they created this legacy. But when you look at below luxury, 15, 20 years ago, that's where there was an incredible opportunity for growth. And I think we are seeing a lot of that as what I've been very, very proud of from somebody who's seen India from the outside and inside is how the infrastructure development is taking place now as we speak. If you compare to what happened in China some 25, 30 years ago, it was really that infrastructure that came first, and then people, made it so much easier for people to move about. And we are seeing the government being very active in this infrastructure investments. And as a result, you see our industry, you see hotels popping up on the outskirts of major gateway cities, Sona, a Courtyard or Ravli, for that matter, or you look at outside Mumbai or Kurg and other locations where we've been opening hotels, which are all in that driving distance, 3 to 4 hour time frame, and that's where you will see some incredible growth. I am very bullish overall on leisure travel, and at the same time, just the consumer is asking for, as in many parts of the world, people are still working from home. There is a lot more focus on doing meetings, small meetings, getaways with teams, and so on and so forth. So meetings, leisure travel is definitely where we see incredible opportunity.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's the segment that is seeing a great amount of growth. We're seeing a lot of that in the work that we do in terms of areas where new developments are taking place, and the feasibilities and market studies, etc., that we're doing. There seems to be, and the operator searches, there seems to be a big surge. Of course, leisure is now much on the radar after COVID. We were also grossly sort of inadequate in our leisure infrastructure, in as much as both the infrastructure and the hospitality infrastructure is concerned. And I think a lot of that is getting settled, getting improved because of new roads, new connectivity, new airports, new railway stations, etc. So a lot of that is certainly going to boom. And of course, with the tier 2, tier 3 cities and the aspirations of the population that live in those cities as they as their personal incomes grow, are going to need a lot of new hotels in those cities. And I think there's a huge market given the size and the population of India. 31 brands, I think, is what you have globally.
That is correct.
That keeps changing as well. Sometimes you add brands, but 16 in India. So are we going to see a few more coming? Is
Definitely.
the market ready?
Before the end of this year, early next year, we're bringing Moxie to India, which
Yes.
I'm very bullish about as a brand. It's one of our fastest growing lifestyle brand. We are very open to bringing more brands into the country. But one thing, Mandeep, we've always done whenever we bring a brand to any market is a whole lot of research on the consumer expectation, because there are nuances, right? Just case in point, when we bought Fairfield by Marriott to India, we had spent millions of dollars researching what the Indian consumer wanted. And it was clear that it wasn't the traditional Fairfield in the US, right? With very limited food and beverage offering. The customer here was looking for some kind of a delivery to the room, right? In terms of food and beverage. They wanted a little bit of F&B. So we built all of that in. And as a result, we've seen great success with the brand in terms of its growth. So for us, it's very important to respect the customer, to understand what the nuances of each markets are, and then fold them into the development of the brand as we bring the brand into the country. So Moxie is next, and I'm sure there'll be a few other along the way in a couple of years from now.
I'm sure there will be as the market opens up. There's still a lot of brands still to come from your portfolio. Moving on a little towards performance of hotels, one of the things that I've noticed while sort of doing our work on various brands is that non-room revenue seems to be gaining some traction. I think everyone's talking about various terminology, ancillary revenue, or whatever else you want to call it. But I think there's a greater focus today in the sector that there is money on the table, which the sector was probably not, was leaving on the table, and there's an opportunity here. I think Marriott has moved from around 5% to 20% in the last maybe decade and a half. I think there's some work in India. I think you're launching a card with HDFC, the
We
Bonvoy
did.
HDFC
We
card.
did actually 24th of August now.
Right. And so is that something which is we're going to see more of on the focus on non-room revenue and ancillary revenues?
Absolutely. I think the key there is to understand the thought process behind, some of these adjacent revenue streams. First and foremost, our core pillar is our loyalty program, Marriott Bonvoy. And as you probably know, globally now we have 186 million members. We're growing at a phenomenally strong pace, particularly here in Asia Pacific. And as we bring new members, it is not just about giving them hotel experiences. What they are seeking out for is, beyond hotels. What we found is 1 out of every 5 bookings a few years ago, at least in US and Europe, people, as they were traveling with families, they were looking for bigger accommodation. And that's when you saw Marriott introduce Marriott Homes and Villas, for that matter. In the US, for years, we've had very strong co-branded credit cards, be it with American Express or JP Morgan Chase. They've been highly successful. And as far as I'm concerned, that is the best form of loyalty to any brand when somebody carries a co-branded credit card in their wallet. We launched these cards in Japan. We have today 2 in Japan. They are, I just met with the American Express team, and they're, according to them, it's by far the best-selling co-brand card in the country. We launched Korea a couple of years ago, and then obviously we launched India August this year. And a big part of the focus there is to continue to bring members into our ecosystem and then be able to offer them experiences. In some cases, money can't buy experiences. So as you probably know, Marriott sponsors Mercedes in Formula One. So if you were in Singapore at the Singapore Grand Prix, our members burnt some 18.5 million points to come and spend time in the Mercedes suite, hanging out with, Hamilton or George Russell, or going into the garage. And those are money can't buy experiences.
Right.
We sponsor Manchester United, Australian Open in Australia. And, I was there earlier this year. Again, close to 10 million points burned by our members. So it's really about continuing to build out an ecosystem where we can offer our members a place beyond just hotels. So today in the US, we're offering insurance services and so on and so forth. So I genuinely believe there is opportunity in this space, and it serves 2 purposes: additional revenue, to your point, but also create an ecosystem for your loyal customers that keeps them very engaged with the brand and the program.
One question I missed asking you when I asked you about brands is we're seeing a movement towards branded residences in India as well. And we've done a project with you where we've signed some branded residences along with the JW Marriott Hotel. Is that something you see gaining traction?
We are. In fact, Asia Pacific branded residences is now one of the strongest growth areas. Now, if you know, Marriott is globally the biggest residential, branded residences operator. Asia Pacific was pretty much the last market to take off. But at least in the last 2 years, coming out of COVID, we've really seen a lot of demand, to the point we actually brought in a regional director specifically focused on residential.
I'm aware.
Yeah.
I'm aware. I've interacted as well.
Correct. So we see a real opportunity as people acquire wealth. You get this upper middle class and upper echelons of society. There's a real desire.
Aspirational living.
Correct. And to be associated with the brand, because it almost guarantees you certain standards. And that's where we see some great opportunities. And this is true across Asia Pacific today.
Fabulous. And before we sort of end, I think there's always this question about technology, and generally the feeling is that the hospitality sector has been a bit of a laggard on adapting to technology. Is that changing? Are you seeing the whole world is talking about AI? Is that something which Marriott is seriously looking at, and is that going to be a game changer?
Yeah, so Marriott is currently in the midst of a $1.5 billion plus tech transformation process, which will start getting implemented in a couple of years from now. And that includes new reservation platform, new upgraded loyalty platform, and so on and so forth. Our view, even pre-pandemic, was that we wanted to be on the front end of particularly digital. So what you've seen coming out of COVID is that there's really been this shift, and almost consumers have leapfrogged in the way reservations were being made previously. What we've seen is, while we were always strong on Marriott.com and our app, the direct bookings have really gone grown at a serious fast clip. And that trend is continuing. There are some other digital pieces that we all thought, QR code for menus that'll stay, have disappeared. But the digital transformation is here to stay. When we talk about AI, we are a firm believer that it'll help improve processes and really, create seamless operations for us to be able to deliver incredible experiences to our customers. So we are very engaged. We strongly believe to be on the front end of technology. Given our size and scale, it does take a little bit of time to get through those 8,500 hotels and almost, hotels that we're opening every day. But I remain very confident that the tech piece will truly be an enabler for us to deliver these incredible experiences and personalized experiences as we think about the future.
I think so too. I think AI will be a game changer, and I think the industry is sort of waking up to that. There's a lot of stuff happening, not just on AI, but a lot of other tech transformation, as you're mentioning, and I'm glad Marriott is taking the leadership position. That's a lot of money, $1.5 billion, which is being invested in tech. Tell me, Raj, 21 countries, 22 working days in a month. How does Rajeev Menon manage the life that you have? Tell me a little about work-life balance, and what does Rajeev Menon do to sort of de-stress?
So first and foremost, I am blessed with an incredible team around me. And one of the things we did coming out of the Starwood acquisition was really put our resources closest to the market. So today, when you look at my world of 21 countries, pre-Starwood, we probably had 3 offices across APEC, APEC. Today, we have a full setup in Japan, led by an area vice president, development team, lawyers, global design, and so on and so forth, that are based in Tokyo. So for example, in Japan during COVID, because 2020 was the Olympics, right? We opened some 35 hotels. Now in the past, we would send people there every day. We couldn't literally couldn't send one person there. Thank God that we had the team on the ground. They managed, and they did exceptionally well. Similarly, we have incredible team running Australia, New Zealand, Pacific, sitting out of Sydney, team sitting in Jakarta, team sitting in Bangkok. In India, we have 3 offices, obviously led by Ranju in Mumbai. So as I said, I'm blessed with an incredible team around me. As far as work-life balance, I do travel a fair bit, but I make a commitment to myself to exercise whenever I get an opportunity, which is not that often, but particularly on the weekends. Given that I have a young family, I try and get home on a Friday and not leave till late Sunday night once everybody's in bed, or ideally Monday morning, which means that over the weekend, my rule is one day I will not touch my computer. I do sneak peek on my iPhone to see if there's any urgent messages, but I try and stay away from the computer for that one day, and then really spend time with the family. When you're at home, with the kids, we play a lot of tennis, we run around, wife and I go for great walks. So that's the way you kind of just disconnect. And as a family, we've always taken a couple of holidays a year where it's just us, and you just find a way to disconnect, because I think that work-life balance is critical. Now, I have not mastered it. I am probably not a good example of it, but at least from my family perspective and my perspective, it works. I'm a believer that each individual has to figure out what their perfect work-life balance means to them, and then work around it.
Last question. What's the cuisine that you really enjoy? Is it Indian, or you're not a great Indian food fan?
No, I have a very simple rule in life, that anywhere I travel, I will only eat local food. Right. More often than less, I will not eat breakfast because of the lifestyle we all live. So, try and cut at least half a meal, if not a meal. But then for the rest, you try and, my belief is that's the best way to connect with people, understand the cultural nuances of the market you are in by experiencing their local cuisine. So I was in Japan, and that's all I did over the last couple of days.
Raj Menon, always a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Raj Menon, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mandeep. Always.